The first corpse Conan saw was hanging upside down from a dead tree, not tied, not impaled. The thing looked fused into the bark itself, as if the wood had grown through the ribs and swallowed the body slowly over the years. Black moss covered the man's face. One empty eye socket stared toward the road, while thick green liquid dripped from his fingertips into the mud below. Conan stopped walking. The forest around him was silent in a way he did not trust. No insects, no birds, no wind moving through the branches. Only the distant sound of water dripping somewhere deep between the trees. He adjusted the grip on his sword and looked ahead. The path entering the valley was ancient, cracked by roots thicker than serpents. Stone pillars leaned on both sides of the trail, carved with symbols so old they no longer resembled language. And every few steps, another corpse appeared, some hanging from branches, some kneeling in the mud, some seated against stones like exhausted travelers who had simply stopped breathing, all of them covered in the same black rot. Conan should have turned back, even he knew that. But smoke rose beyond the forest, green smoke, and where there was smoke there were people, or something pretending to be people. Rain began to fall as he entered deeper into the valley. Cold rain, heavy enough to soak the fur on his shoulders within moments. The trees above him twisted together so tightly that they blocked most of the sky, turning the world beneath them into permanent dusk. Then he saw the village, or what remained of it. Dozens of wooden huts stood half-collapsed around a circular pit in the center of the settlement. Spears decorated with skulls surrounded the pit like warning markers. Fires still burned beside several homes, but no voices came from anywhere. Conan walked slowly between the structures. The smell hit him first. Rot. Not fresh death, old death. The kind that clung to stones. Inside the first hut, he found bones spread across the floor beside shattered clay bowls. In the second hut, deep claw marks covered the walls from floor to ceiling. In the third, he found a woman seated near a cold fire pit with her back turned toward him. She wasn't moving. Conan stepped closer carefully. The woman's skin was gray-green beneath tangled black hair. Primitive necklaces made of teeth hung from her neck. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. Dead, at least that was what he thought. Then her fingers moved, slowly. A cracking sound came from her spine as her head tilted at an impossible angle. Conan immediately stepped back and reached for his blade. The woman rose unnaturally fast. Her knees bent the wrong direction as she stood. Dark liquid poured from her mouth while both empty eyes locked onto him. Then she screamed, not like a human, like something buried underground, trying to remember how humans sounded. The entire village answered. From every hut around him came movement. Bones dragging across wood. Wet footsteps. Low growls. Conan turned as shadows emerged from the rain one after another. Men, women, children, all dead, all walking. Some carried rusted axes. Others dragged broken spears behind them. One massive corpse still wore the skull of an animal over its face, stitched directly into rotten flesh, and every pair of dead eyes glowed faintly green in the darkness. The first creature rushed him violently. Conan split its skull open with one swing. The corpse dropped hard into the mud, but the others kept coming, fast, too fast. A dead child leapt onto his back with teeth snapping wildly, while another corpse grabbed his arm from the side. Conan slammed the child against a wooden post, hard enough to crush its spine, then drove his sword through the throat of the second attacker. The dead did not scream when cut. They only hissed, like wet meat burning over fire. More shapes emerged through the rain, too many. Conan backed toward the center pit as the entire village closed around him slowly, surrounding him beneath the green smoke rising from the earth. And then, something enormous moved below the ground. The pit beside him breathed. The earth split open, with a sound like wet skin tearing apart. Conan jumped back instinctively as thick green vapor erupted from the pit and rolled across the village floor. The corpses surrounding him froze immediately. Every dead face turned toward the hole, listening, waiting. For a moment, even the rain seemed quieter. Then a hand emerged from the darkness below. Not human, far too large. The fingers were swollen and gray, wrapped in chains blackened with age. Mud and insects poured from beneath its nails as the thing slowly gripped the edge of the stone pit. Another hand followed, then the head. Conan had fought giant warriors before. He had killed beasts larger than horses. But this thing climbing from beneath the village looked ancient in a way that disturbed even him. Its body was enormous, stitched together from layers of rotting flesh and old ceremonial armor made from bone plates. Thick roots had grown through its chest over the centuries, twisting around exposed ribs like living serpents. A crown of antlers had been nailed directly into its skull, and its eyes burned green like fire beneath deep water. The dead villagers knelt as the creature pulled itself fully into the rain. The giant carried a stone execution hammer chained to its wrist. The weapon alone was large enough to crush a horse. Conan tightened his grip on the sword. The creature stared at him silently. Then it spoke with a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together underground. "You breathe." The corpses around Conan began twitching violently again. One by one, they started crawling toward him through the mud. The giant lifted its hammer slowly. Conan moved first. He charged directly toward the monster before the dead could surround him completely. His sword crashed against the creature's ribs with enough force to split bone apart. The giant barely reacted. Its hammer swung downward instantly. Conan threw himself sideways as the weapon obliterated the ground beside him, spraying mud, skulls, and shattered stone through the air. The impact alone knocked several corpses apart nearby. The dead rushed him at once. Conan buried his blade into the face of one attacker, kicked another into the fire pit, then grabbed a fallen spear from the mud and drove it through two corpses charging from the side. But more kept coming. Always more. A body without legs dragged itself toward him, using only its arms. A woman with half her jaw missing clawed at his chest, while another dead warrior wrapped rotten fingers around his throat from behind. Conan smashed his head backward into the warrior's face, breaking teeth and bone, then ripped the corpse over his shoulder directly into the path of the giant's hammer. The impact exploded the dead body into black blood. Still the giant kept advancing, slow, heavy, unstoppable. Green smoke poured constantly from the cracks in its flesh. Conan realized something terrible then. The vapor was reaching the corpses, and every dead thing touched by it began moving faster. The valley itself was feeding them. The giant suddenly stopped walking. Its burning eyes shifted toward the forest beyond the village. The other corpses became silent again. Conan heard it too. Drums, far away at first, deep, rhythmic, hundreds of them. The sound echoed through the trees, like the heartbeat of something buried beneath the entire valley. Then shapes appeared between the trunks. Thousands, not living men. An army of dead barbarians emerging slowly from the darkness, carrying axes, stone blades, broken shields, and banners made of human skin. Some rode massive decaying beasts with exposed ribs and glowing eyes. Others dragged chains attached to cages filled with twitching corpses that were still trying to crawl free. And behind them all, something moved through the fog that towered above the trees themselves. Conan looked around the ruined village. There was nowhere left to run. The drums never stopped. They echoed through the valley with the same slow rhythm as a dying heart, shaking the wet ground beneath Conan's feet while the army of dead barbarians advanced through the fog. The giant standing before him stepped aside, not out of fear, out of obedience. Whatever approached behind the army held command over all of them. Conan backed away carefully, breathing hard, sword covered in black blood and rotten flesh. The corpses around the pit no longer attacked him immediately. They simply watched him with those glowing green eyes, twitching as rain poured down their ruined faces. Then the trees began to bend, one after another. Massive trunks cracked loudly somewhere beyond the fog, as if something enormous was forcing its way through the forest without bothering to walk around anything. The dead army parted, and Conan finally saw it. At first it resembled a man, a gigantic barbarian wrapped in chains and funeral cloth, hanging from its body like rotting skin. But as the creature moved closer, Conan realized the horror of its shape. It had 3 faces, one living, one skeletal, one still half covered in decayed flesh, all fused together into the same enormous head. Its body was stitched with thousands of bones hammered directly into the skin like armor. Green fire leaked constantly from inside its chest cavity with every movement it made. And behind the creature, dragging through the mud, came an entire fortress, not carried by wheels, pulled by chains attached to hundreds of dead slaves. A moving temple of black stone covered in burning green symbols. The drums were coming from inside it. The giant beside the pit lowered its head as the massive creature approached. Every corpse in the valley knelt, even the beasts. Conan did not. One of the creature's faces slowly turned toward him. The living face smiled faintly, while the skeletal one remained frozen in permanent hatred. "You are far from Cimmeria," the thing said. Its voice sounded wrong, not loud, not deep, but layered, as if many dead men were speaking through the same mouth at once. Conan said nothing. The creature studied him carefully before speaking again. "Most living men beg when they arrive here." The skeletal face twitched. "You smell a battle instead?" Conan finally answered. "I smell death." For the first time, the creature laughed. The sound rolled across the valley like distant thunder, while several corpses nearby began violently shaking, as though reacting to the noise itself. Then the giant creature lifted one massive arm and pointed toward the moving fortress behind it. "The valley remembers all warriors," it said, "and tonight it will remember you." The dead army rose again instantly. Conan moved before they could surround him. He sprinted toward the nearest hut as arrows made from sharpened bones flew through the rain behind him. One sliced across his shoulder, while another buried itself into the wooden wall inches from his head. The village exploded into chaos. Dead warriors charged from every direction, screaming through ruined throats, while Conan hacked through them with savage force, cutting bodies apart as he pushed toward the forest. But something terrible was happening. The corpses were changing. The green vapor flowing through the valley had thickened into a heavy mist, now covering the ground waist-high. Every dead thing touching it began mutating slowly. Bones cracked outward beneath skin. Limbs lengthened unnaturally. Several corpses dropped onto all fours and began moving like starving animals. One dead warrior opened his mouth wide enough for the jaw to split completely down the center, and the drums kept beating, closer, faster. Conan reached the edge of the forest just as enormous shadows descended from the trees above him. The creatures had once been human, perhaps. Now they resembled giant spiders made from corpses and roots fused together into towering shapes with too many limbs and antler-like bones protruding from their backs. One landed directly in front of Conan with enough force to shake the ground. Its face still looked partially human, and it whispered something softly before attacking. "Stay." The creature hit Conan hard enough to drive him into the mud. Its limbs moved with horrifying speed, bending and twisting like broken branches while the human faces fused into its body, screamed endlessly beneath layers of roots and fungus. Conan rolled beneath the first strike as clawed hands tore through the ground beside his head. He slashed upward immediately, carving deep into the creature's chest. Black liquid exploded across his arms. The monster barely reacted. Instead, dozens of human hands suddenly pushed outward from inside the wound itself, grabbing wildly for Conan's throat and face. He ripped backward just before the creature collapsed on top of him. The forest around him erupted with movement. More of the things descended from the trees. Some crawled upside down across branches. Others dragged themselves through the fog with limbs that were never meant to exist on any living creature. And above all of it, the drums continued. Conan ran deeper into the forest. Not from fear, from instinct. Every second spent standing still meant death. Branches whipped across his face while rotten shapes moved beside him through the fog at the same pace. He could hear them breathing, smell their decay. The valley was hunting him now. Then suddenly silence. The drums stopped completely. Conan slowed carefully. The forest ahead opened into a clearing surrounded by ancient stones taller than men. Symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly green beneath the rain. In the center stood a fire, real fire, orange, not green, and beside it sat an old man, alive. The stranger wore animal furs blackened by age, and carried no weapon except a knife made from sharpened bone. Long white hair hung over his shoulders, while scars covered nearly every inch of exposed skin. Conan did not lower his sword. The old man looked at him calmly. "You should not have entered this valley." His voice sounded human. Actually human. After everything Conan had seen that night, the sound alone felt unnatural. "What is this place?" Conan asked. The old man stared into the flames for several seconds before answering. "A grave." Thunder rolled above the forest. The old man continued quietly. "Long before your people crossed the northern mountains, there was a kingdom here." He pointed toward the darkness behind the trees. "The dead king you saw was once its ruler." Conan remembered the enormous creature with 3 faces. The old man's eyes narrowed. He sought immortality beneath the earth. The priests warned him not to wake what slept below the valley. The fire suddenly dimmed. They failed. Something moved beneath the stones surrounding the clearing. Conan heard it immediately, breathing, heavy breathing. The old man looked up slowly. "The valley is alive now," he whispered. "It feeds on death, and every warrior who dies here becomes part of it." The ground trembled violently. Several ancient stones cracked apart as enormous roots burst upward from beneath the earth like serpents escaping burial. Corpses fused into the roots began clawing themselves free, screaming silently through stitched mouths. The old man stood immediately. For the first time, fear appeared in his face. "He found you faster than I thought." Conan turned toward the forest. Shapes surrounded the clearing again, hundreds of glowing green eyes between the trees. But behind them stood something worse, the three-faced king, closer now. Its massive body barely fit between the ancient trunks as green fire poured from inside its chest and illuminated the rain around it. The dead king raised one enormous hand slowly toward the old man and spoke words that made the entire forest shake. "You escaped me once." The old man grabbed Conan by the arm hard. "There's only one way to kill him." The ground beneath them suddenly split open, and far below the earth, Conan saw a gigantic green eye opening in the darkness. The silence after the drums stopped felt worse than the noise. Conan stepped out from the shattered hut with blood running down his arm and rain pouring from his hair. Around him, the battlefield had changed again. The dead were no longer attacking. Thousands of corpses stood completely still across the valley, all facing the distant tower burning atop the mountain, waiting. Green mist rolled between their legs like river water. Even the giant creatures had stopped moving. The antler-crowned executioner remained beside the pit with its hammer lowered. The enormous bark-covered thing stood near the forest edge, its hollow chest still opening and closing slowly as rooted corpses twitched inside. Everything was watching the tower. Then the fire at its summit darkened. Conan felt it immediately, a pressure in the air, like the valley itself had taken a breath. The ground beneath his feet began pulsing softly. Once, twice, then cracks spread across the earth everywhere at once. The corpses surrounding the village suddenly collapsed face first into the mud, as if something had ripped the life from them again. For one brief moment, the valley became truly dead. Conan did not waste it. He ran through the rain, past kneeling corpses, past burning huts and piles of broken bodies. The mountain path leading toward the tower twisted through ancient stone ruins, swallowed by roots and black moss. Massive statues lined the ascent, their faces eroded beyond recognition, though each one held the same expression of terror. The higher Conan climbed, the warmer the rain became. Soon it no longer smelled like water, it smelled like blood. Halfway up the mountain, he found the bodies, thousands of them. Not warriors, prisoners. Men, women, children, all chained together around the base of the tower in enormous circles. Their corpses were ancient, almost fused into the stone itself. Rusted collars remained locked around their necks, while black roots crawled through rib cages and empty mouths. Conan stared silently. This was not a plague, not a curse. This had been feeding for centuries. A low sound suddenly echoed from above. Breathing, slow, heavy. Conan climbed the final steps with his sword ready. The tower interior was impossibly large, disappearing upward into darkness, where green fire burned inside hanging iron cages. Strange symbols covered every wall, written not with paint, but with dried blood layered over stone again and again across generations. And in the center of the tower, something enormous hung suspended by chains. At first Conan could not understand what he was seeing. The creature looked almost human, almost. Its body was stretched grotesquely thin, towering high above the floor with pale skin pulled tightly over endless ribs. Hundreds of chains pierced its flesh, disappearing into the surrounding walls like veins connected to the mountain itself. Its eyes were closed, but its chest was moving, breathing. The valley was breathing with it. Then Conan noticed the faces, human faces buried beneath the creature's skin. Thousands of them, moving weakly, screaming silently. The thing opened its eyes. Green fire exploded across the tower. Every corpse in the valley below rose again at the exact same moment. The creature smiled, and Conan finally understood the horror. The dead were not being controlled. They were being digested, slowly, forever. The creature's voice entered the tower like a whisper spoken directly inside Conan's skull. "Stay." Chains began breaking loose from the walls around the room. The entire tower trembled violently as corpses started climbing the outer walls from below, flooding upward toward the summit like ants swarming fresh meat. Conan charged without hesitation. The first chain whipped toward him fast enough to split stone apart. He ducked beneath it and drove his sword directly into the creature's abdomen. Black liquid exploded from the wound. The tower screamed, not the creature, the tower itself. The walls pulsed like flesh while the chains thrashed wildly through the air. Dead hands burst from cracks in the floor trying to grab Conan's legs as the entire mountain shook around him. The creature opened its mouth impossibly wide, and every face trapped beneath its skin began screaming together. Conan ripped the sword upward with all his strength. The creature split open from stomach to chest. Green fire erupted outward. The mountain exploded. The tower collapsed instantly. Conan threw himself through falling stone and fire as the summit shattered behind him. Corpses climbing the walls lost their grip and tumbled screaming into the abyss below, while the valley itself began sinking inward like rotting flesh collapsing after death. Then came the sound. Not a roar, not an explosion. A long, deep exhale. The final breath of something ancient finally dying. By dawn, the rain had stopped. The green mist was gone, and the valley was silent at last. Conan stood alone among the ruins as pale sunlight slowly touched the mountains. Thousands of corpses covered the earth around him again, motionless, dead, for real this time. Conan looked back once toward the broken remains of the tower. Then he saw it, far beneath the rubble, a faint green glow still burning in the dark.